under Felix, to try to see if he would bring him to Jerusalem, and they would use their Sicarii or whatever they called them back then, to go forth and kill Paul in the way. It's kind of a shame too, the fact that they would think this way. These are religious people making a decision to murder another human being, albeit somebody that they felt was a heretic, but they were planning to kill Paul just to eliminate him. That's never right, is it? Can you think of any instance where that would be right? No, that's not right. Not without a trial. They had their own laws, but and it's the same thing they did with Jesus. Let them therefore, said he, which are among you that are able to go down with me and accuse this man if there be any wickedness in him. So Festus, man of justice, he's not going to do anything unless he hears the case. We're starting this thing over again. We're going to see another trial, and you're going to get a chance to bring up your concerns. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, he commanded that Paul would be brought. So Paul's again brought forward, and when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about and laid many grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. Here we go again. Same story, right? What were the things? You remember what they were trying to prove before? You remember what those were? Defiling the temple. Let's see, what was it? Defiling the temple. I can't remember just exactly what all. There were 3 of them, if you remember. Yeah, and the resurrection. That's right. So it was a sower of discord. Sower of discord, defiling the temple by bringing in uncircumcised folks, and then teaching about the resurrection. Those were the 3 items. So yeah, after a trial, after he had a chance to basically, do his thing. The Jews, no one was killed except under 2 or 3 witnesses. You had Deuteronomy, I believe, talks about how to handle this. No one was condemned unless 2 or 3 witnesses were present to confirm that. You just didn't make a plan out and go kill the guy. That's what I'm saying. That's not right. That wasn't within their law to be able to do that. Okay, so here's Paul's defense. It's going to be very short this time, what's recorded. And while he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither the temple, nor against Caesar have I offered anything at all. So he takes every single one of their complaints, which I'm sure by now, 2 years, they came up with a couple more. But he sums them all up into 3 different areas. He says nothing against the law of Moses. What was he teaching that was contrary to the law? Exactly. That's all he was teaching. And they were still waiting for the fulfillment of the law, which, incidentally, they're still waiting for the fulfillment of the law today. So that's really the only difference. Paul's saying, look, I didn't do anything against the law. I'm basically preaching that God fulfilled what he promised in Jesus of Nazareth. That's really the sticking point, wasn't it? If Jesus was the fulfillment of the law or not. And so, but Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure. Oh, let me back up a little bit. So then also against the temple, which we know he would never do anything against the temple. And then finally against Caesar, which was really what Festus would be interested in, correct? He wouldn't be interested in the law and defilement of the temple. And after all, Paul's a Roman citizen. So he's only going to be concerned with, did you do anything against Rome? Now, if you're getting the Jews over here all stirred up and you're causing discord, that could be a charge, right? If what you're doing is causing a riot, that could be cause for a problem, because that was unlawful. Verse 9, but Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things before me? What would your answer be if you was Paul? Absolutely not. I'm not going to Jerusalem. What had he been informed of under Felix? Why'd they move him out of Jerusalem to begin with? Do you remember? Yeah, bring him on down. We want to inquire more about him, and 40 guys took an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. So, and it was Paul's sister's son, I think, if I remember right. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. He came and told of the plot. He said, look, they're planning this. So why would Paul think there would be anything any different? I mean, Paul's going to say, absolutely, I'm not going down there. So he's going to say no way to that. And anyways, even if there wasn't a plot to kill him, could he really get a fair trial in Jerusalem among the Jews? Absolutely not. He's not going to get that. Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. Now, what's he saying there? Thou very well knowest. He's being pretty bold, talking to a brand new proconsul. These guys are powerful now. And here's little Paul saying, thou very well knowest I've done nothing wrong. He's basically saying, you read the transcript from the last trial. You understand what's going on in this province. You know I've done nothing wrong against these people. Basically what he's accusing him of is that he's holding a puppet trial just to curry favor with the Jews. Is that a new concept for Christians to have to deal with? What Paul's going through is just going to continue down through the ages, isn't it? It happens today. We've got Christians on Facebook, that are being taken down because they dare to mention something about homosexuality, or gender identity, or they're just basically taken out of the group. Twitter does the same thing. We see laws being passed, that kind of concern us a little bit, don't we? Where Christians are being muzzled, basically. Not allowed to speak about these things because they're not politically correct. They're not where we're going as a nation. We may have to face the same, and this has happened before. I mean, if you go back down through the Middle Ages and times, Christians were persecuted just to curry favor with the masses, which is exactly what's happening here to Paul. Now, I think Paul's telling him, you know very well this trial has no basis. They've not brought any folks in that have any knowledge of what I've done wrong. You've not shown this at all, but yet we're having a trial, and I'm still in prison. Why? Because this huge body of people, the Jews, want me punished because they don't like what I'm saying. And I've shown you that what I'm saying is grounded in truth. I've taken you back to the law and the prophets and explained that, but they will not accept that. So it's interesting, and I think from this we can take away that same thing. We're not ever going to quit fighting, even though the populace says this is what we should accept, and we may be on trial someday, for saying that, for saying things that the populace does not like, and judges will curry favor with them. But let's see how Paul handles it. So he pulls out the trump card, throws it on the table, and says, because he's a Roman citizen, he has a right, even after the proconsul has given up on him, which is what Paul surmised from Paul, will you go to Jerusalem and be judged for these things? Isn't that odd that he would do that? He's the highest court in the land, and he's wanting to defer back to Jerusalem to the populace. Really? Wait a minute. I'm a Roman citizen. Rick, did you raise your hand? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a Roman citizen, and um, you're sending me back down to a lower court, down to Jerusalem? You have to make the decision. And if you're not going to make it, and you're abandoning me, which it appears that you're doing, then, hey, I appeal to Caesar. Because every Roman citizen had a right to do that, had a right to appeal their case back to the people of Rome. I assume to have a trial. It had morphed into, by this time, the Caesar would do it. He represented the people. And so even knowing that he's going to be before Nero, he appeals to Caesar. Which brings up an interesting point. What was Paul's earnest desire next? Go to Rome. Let's read just real quickly. Turn to Romans with me, Romans 1:10. Talks a little bit about that in the letter that he wrote to the Romans from Corinth. He wrote this from Corinth as he was there collecting the gift for the poor saints in Jerusalem. And he says, making request, if by any means now at length I may have a prosperous journey by the will of God to come unto you. And then again, turn to chapter 15, verses 23 and 25. He mentions it again. Romans 15, 23 and 25, he says, but now having no more place in these parts, and having a greater desire these many years to come unto you, whensoever I take my journey into Spain, I will come to you, for I trust to see you in my journey, and to be brought on my way thitherward by you, if first I be somewhat filled with your company. So these two passages in Romans clearly indicate that Paul was anxious to get there, and he must have been praying, because remember what Jesus came when he stood by him and talked to him? You're going to testify for me in Rome. So Paul's been praying to go to Rome. Isn't it interesting how God has answered his prayer? He's going to Rome, but how's he going? He's going in bonds, which is another sermon. You know, we could talk about. It's God answering prayers. How does God answer prayers? Does he always answer prayers based on, how we think? Paul's praying he wants to go to Rome. How's he think he's going to go to Rome? He's going to take a boat, going to go up there, he's going to meet the brethren, they're going to usher him into the church there in Rome. He's going to preach for a couple of years there, just like he's done at Corinth and Ephesus. That's what he's thinking when he prays those prayers to God. When Jesus stood beside him, that's what he was thinking. He wasn't thinking he was going to go to Rome in chains. Something to think about, isn't it? God answers prayers, but sometimes not in the way we think they should be answered. But we know that Paul is definitely going to make good use of that, isn't he, when he goes to Rome? Because we're going to find out in some of the other epistles that he's actually talked that those from the household of Caesar say hello. He's talking. He's going all the way up to Nero's household and preaching the gospel from prison. Anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of a little side note. And then verse 12, verse 11, for if I be an offender or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them, I appeal to Caesar. So, in short, he's saying there, if I've done anything worthy of death, if I've committed a crime that's worthy of death, I'll be the first to put my head on the chopping block. Because I want to obey the law. Romans 13 talks about our responsibilities to the law. We have full responsibility to obey those that have the rule over us, don't we? Government is ordained of God. And Paul believed that. He wasn't some kind of subversive, revolutionary. If he committed a crime, he wanted to be punished for it. And that's what he's telling us there. So he says, I refuse not to die, but if there be none of these things wherein I'm accused unto them, I appeal to Caesar. So if we're going to have this puppet trial, then I'm not going back to Jerusalem. Festus, if you can't handle it, I want to appeal to Caesar, and off to Rome I go. And that will be how Paul goes to Rome, in chains. Now, another point that is kind of interesting here is that Paul, while Paul is on trial, he's not going as a lamb to the slaughter, is he? He's a Christian. He is to show humility as a Christian, but he's demanding justice. He's demanding the same justice that an unbeliever would get from the trial, right? Just because he's a Christian, he is standing up for his rights as a citizen. So while we understand that we're not to go to law against a brother, we're not to take a brother to court, but we are, if we go to court, we are to be strong, okay? Because we are children of God, we should have justice as well. And then in verse 12, he says, Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Then unto Caesar shalt thou go. Wonder a little bit there as I read that, if he's not telling him, okay, you asked for it. You want to go to Nero? He probably knew all that was going on back there with Nero. Yeah.
So, what are Paul's options? Stay here with Felix, who he knows he's not going to get their trial, that nothing's going to happen with this case. He's going to either languish and on for the rest of his life, or go to Caesar.
The final trump card. He's got no other option. Chris is right. He's got to go. Then Festus, when he conferred with the council, he said, okay, you're going to go. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came into Caesarea to salute Festus. So Agrippa and Bernice, what are they doing? They've got a small little kingdom just north of Judea. What's their goal coming down to visit Festus? He's a neighbor. He's the new big dog in town. They're wanting to get down there to meet him, and I'm sure they'll be doing things together. They may have been invited to come down. Now that he's going to send him to Caesar, what's he got to do? Is he going to just send him to Caesar? Hey, put that guy in chains and send him up to Nero. I don't know anything about this case. I can't make the decision. Send him up there. What's he going to have to do before he sends Paul out there? His job. That's right. He should have done his job and released him 2 proconsuls ago. But what's his job? If he He does. That's probably job 1, Chris. Got to investigate. And when he's done investigating, what will he do? He won't do that. He won't judge. Because he wants to see. He should, yeah, but he won't do it. So No. Oh, no, he can't. That's right. He'd be backing off his, what's that? Yeah. He's got to write something down to send with Paul and say, okay, I'm sending you this man. He's a subversive that is undermining my ability to keep the peace. Here's the things that he's done. He's going to have send something to Nero to tell him how to try the case, how to make his decision. Of course, Paul went to Rome with Christian across here at the absolute wrong time, right? Why would I say that? Why was it the wrong time for Paul to go to Rome with Christian tacked on his forehead? Yep, part of it. But what else is going to happen here shortly? Yeah. What's going to happen though? What's going to happen in July of '64? That's going to cause Christians to be in a bad light. The Great Fire, right? And history says that Nero used Christians to blame that on them. So Paul's going to be in Rome at least 62. The fire is going to occur. The Christian persecution is going to start. It's a localized persecution. And Paul's going to be there in Rome with Christian, on his forehead. Probably not a good time to be in Rome with a man like Nero. We're not told how he died, but pretty reasonable that Nero would have killed any Christian that he had, in prison at that time. So what about Agrippa and Bernice? Now this Agrippa is the great-grandson of Herod the Great. His father is the one who beheaded James, Herod Agrippa I. He's the one that had beheaded him. Herod Agrippa I had two daughters, Bernice and Drusilla. We just got done studying about Drusilla, didn't we? Drusilla was Felix's wife, the proconsul before Festus. Bernice, she had a couple of marriages, and she's come back to Agrippa. She is Agrippa II, this Agrippa. She is his sister. She's come back to them, and they lived together. And there was according to Josephus, there was an incestuous relationship between them, and she acted almost like a wife to him. They were not married. So they've come down as two very prominent people to talk with Festus. Any questions up to this point? And when they had been there many days, Festus declares Paul's case unto the king, saying, There is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, who didn't do his job, about whom, when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have a judgment against him. So he's just kind of recapping the whole thing to him. To whom I answered, It is not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused has a chance to see his accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crimes laid against him. This was the Roman law, right? Romans, this is the way they did things, unless you were a captive or in war or something like that. But if you were a Roman citizen, you had the right to a trial, and they were proud of that. They were proud of that justice system that they had in place, because at that time it was not common. Therefore, when they were come hither without delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought forth, against whom, when the accusers stood up, they brought none accusations of such things as I suppose. So he's recounting the trial, that there was no basis to the charge. They didn't bring anybody from Asia, that said that he was circumventing the law and telling everybody everywhere, speaking everywhere against the law of Moses and defiling the temple in Jerusalem. There was no witnesses that could come forward and say that. Even if there was, it would have been not interested. It would have been a non-issue as far as Festus was concerned. But they brought nobody. There was nobody there. He's telling this to Agrippa. But they had certain questions against him of their own superstition, their religion. What do some of the other versions say there? But he had certain questions against him of their own religion. I don't think he's got Agrippa sitting right here and he's talking to him and Bernice. I don't think he's being disrespectful about the law of Moses and the things that Paul's teaching concerning the law and the prophecies that have been fulfilled. I don't think he's being disrespectful. The word superstition would have been a little bit disrespectful, I think, to them.
The word that's translated superstition there is the sense of their fear about the gods.
Right.
And so the relation to them.
Yeah. And he would use that, Festus would have used that same word, that same Greek word, to talk about his own religion. So it's not a derogatory thing. And of one Jesus, which was dead, Paul admits that Jesus died, but Paul affirms that he's alive. So that kind of comes out, that issue. Remember, we talked about the difference between what the Jews were saying versus what Paul was saying. It comes down to fulfilled, not fulfilled. Jesus, not Jesus. Because they all believe the law and the prophets. They're all reading from the same book. Except those that are saying there is no resurrection from the dead, right? There are those Jews that are saying there's no resurrection of the dead, there is no supernatural, we're just here on earth. So, anyways, he summarizes that way to, to Agrippa. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. And what was his answer? No, I'm not going to Jerusalem. There's no way. But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto a hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself tomorrow, said he. And he said, Thou shalt hear him. Why would Agrippa be interested in this? He's there to visit and curry favor with Festus, and he finds out Paul's there. How many prisoners do you figure were in Caesarea at this time that he could have been interested in? But yet Paul is the one, he says, yeah, that's an interesting case. I want to take time out, and I want to listen to this prisoner and see what he has to say. What do you think? I mean, just there's no right answer. Why do you think? He's high profile. That's right. Yeah. What about the miracles that Paul's been performing? You know, we don't hear a lot about miracles of Paul, but we know that he did. We know that Paul had the power just like the other apostles. He was healing people. That might have been it. He might have wanted to, to see that for himself. But in any event, it's like Michael said, he's high profile. He's definitely something of a curiosity. And isn't that the same way the gospel is today? I mean, there are people that wouldn't be interested in living the Christian life at all. But they're curious to hear about it. They're curious to know just exactly what these folks believe. I want to hear him rail against sin. I want to hear him, tell me just firsthand what these Christians believe. Useful information. This story is coming to my land if it's not already there. David? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. And not only has he risen, but he'll raise you too if you follow him. I mean, the concept of eternal life is amazing, isn't it? When you think about it. Thinking about it, actually, that's the fact of not dying, whether you're a sinner or whether you're a just person, is something to really get your arms around. Doesn't matter if you follow Jesus or not, does it? You ain't ever going to die. You're going to be alive, knowing that you could have followed Jesus and remembering very astutely when you had the choice to change directions and you didn't do it. The ability to have eternal life, that would certainly drag him in, wouldn't it? Let's see, where are we here? Because I doubted such manner of questions, I asked him whether to go to Jerusalem. He wouldn't go. Agrippa said he wants to see him. Okay, so, and on the morrow, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice with great pomp, P-O-M-P, and was entered into the place of hearing with the chief captains, the principal men of the city. At Festus' commandment, Paul was brought forth. Now, the Bible, it doesn't accentuate, it doesn't exaggerate, it actually underestimates a lot of times, doesn't it? It doesn't really, somebody help me out here. Scripture doesn't tend to, when you listen to the news, how I'm trying to think of the word right now, they try to slant it to the exciting, build, crescendo, build a, Bible doesn't do that. It just gives you facts. So when the Bible says there was pomp, believe me, it was a big deal, okay? These folks wore their robes. Anybody that was anybody came out to be seen, to see and be seen. It was a big deal. They came and they filled the judgment hall. And then here comes Paul, this little man brought out, in chains. I mean, they were interested to hear what he said. You just have to wonder, and we're gonna study next week the speech that he gave for him. But I don't know. It's just fascinating that he had the chief captains. These would have been men, according to the commentary, they would have been men that was over 1,000 men. These were the generals, the people that were high up, that were consulted on important issues having to do with Judea. So anybody that was anybody is ready, dressed for the occasion, and ready to hear Paul speak. Truly, when Jesus said, "You're going to speak to rulers on my behalf," the prophecy is unfolding right now. And Festus said to King Agrippa and all the men that were present with us, "Ye see this man, about whom all the multitude of Jews have dealt with me, both at Jerusalem and also here, crying that he ought to not live any longer. So Festus is kind of MC in the show. But when I found that he had committed nothing worthy of death, and that he himself had appealed to Augustus, I have determined to send him, of whom I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord." So he's talking to Agrippa just because he's the highest level person in the room, but he's also talking to all these counselors, military men, chief men of the city. Help. Somebody give me something good to write about him so that I don't look like an idiot in front of my Lord Augustus, who would have been Nero, correct? Everybody see that? By saying Augustus, he's clearly talking about the emperor of Rome. I mean, if I was going to write something to the emperor of Rome, who really had all power at that time, right? I'd want it to be pretty good. If I was going to waste his time and send somebody to him, I want to be sure that at the end of the day, when he saw him, he wouldn't say, "Well, Festus could have made this decision." I'd want it to be pretty good. And that's what he's doing. He's saying, look, nothing reasonable has come out of these trials. I mean, think about all of the places Paul's been. He was on trial in Jerusalem, right, before the Sanhedrin. He's been on trial with Felix, with Festus, and now they're having to have a special meeting to try to figure out what the charges are going to be, what to send and what to write to them. Paul's really created a real problem, hadn't he, for the Romans. They want Judea to stay peaceful, but they're kind of between a rock and a hard place here. And the fact that I'm sure if he was just a Jew, he'd be dead already. There'd be no issue. But he's a Roman citizen, and everybody knows it. So they're really stuck. "For it seemeth to me unreasonable to send a prisoner, and not withal to signify the crimes laid against him." That does sound unreasonable. And that's it. The chapter ends right there. Next week we're going to take a look at what Paul does, before and what his speech entails. It's rather interesting, I think, as he talks to Gentiles and tries to convince them and has the opportunity to preach Christ to them. Anybody glean anything interesting that they'd like to bring up to the group out of this chapter? Yeah.
People are watching.
Yeah, right.
This group over here that I'm going to be responsible to keep wrangle and paying taxes and uprising, they'll let me do whatever I want to do, really, to judge this guy. But then once all that's gone, they can use my decision against me in the future. So my justice as a new proconsul is being watched, and he really has no. Really the only thing that he can do is to kind of push and get as many people saddled on this decision as push Caesar as he can. So he doesn't look like he's not doing his job of being just.
Yeah, the old thing we do in the factory, try to get as many people out on the limb on the decision as possible. That way, if it gets cut off, they're losing more than just me, That's exactly right. I hadn't thought about that aspect, Michael. That's right. I've been too long out of the workforce, I guess. That's exactly right. Get as many people out there, get them all buying into it. He's going to have them all sign their names. General so-and-so said this, and leader of the city so-and-so said this, and he's going to go forward with it. But Paul has created a real problem for them, and isn't it? It goes back to the gospel itself. The gospel creates a problem, and that's why Christians are hated, so much among some circles, is because when we teach somebody the gospel, they're put on notice. They now have heard it, they understand it, and their juncture, it's their point of what am I going to do? Just like Felix, come to me when I have a more convenient season. Don't. I can't do this right now. My life's too complicated. I've got so much that I'm enjoying doing. All that baggage that comes into the point of making the decision to follow Christ and just saying, no, now's not the time. Now, we hope that he did, later in life, that he did come to Christ. But anything else? Anybody come up with any other items? Sandra. In front of. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't change his preaching, whether he's talking to somebody he's run into on First Street in Jerusalem, to what he's getting ready to say here, in front of all these great men. And it's a kind of a lesson for us. Do we ever feel? We don't not as nervous about talking to our neighbors, but what about people that are at the next level up? People, our boss, our friends that we'd like to become like them. You ever feel that pressure? I think we feel that as we're younger people than we do when we get older. When you get older, you don't care who you impress. But usually that's the case. But Sandra's right. He's going to go before these kings, proconsuls, and he's not going to change the message, is he? He's going to teach them about Jesus. He's going to teach them about he died, he was resurrected. He's going to tell them about his hope for eternal life. He's going to tell them about sin. He's, you see where I'm going with that? He's a great example of being sure that we teach the gospel no matter who, because everybody has the right to hear it. Even folks that we are, we're just a little bit embarrassed to tell them that we're Christians or that we believe. You believe that Noah actually put all the animals in the ark? Really? This is 2021, don't you read any science magazines or anything? Don't you have any sense? You still believe in Noah and the ark and the Garden of Eden? You know, even Christians are trying to water it down. One day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day, right? God didn't do it in one day, for crying out loud. He did it in periods. He did this creation thing in periods. All of the, and there's those among us that claim to be Christians that they don't want to profess that God made the world in 6 days, you know, and then rested on the seventh day. But Paul doesn't care, does he? He's going to tell you the whole supernatural story, you know, and I don't know. I just think it's really impressive. Thanks, Sandra, for bringing that up.
If you haven't had your picture made correctly, you'd like to, before start the story, go over here to the left, if not, go ahead and start. Go ahead and start.